Welcome to the Academic Ark channel. This is the third video of the series called From 0 to 100 Article Writing. This video is about the structure of a scientific article. You can find the list of videos here. If you see the list, you can understand that the third video, which you are currently watching, provides a complete explanation of the general structure of an article. Now let's take a look at this general diagram to see and be familiar with the different parts of a scientific writing. Any scientific paper that you notice and you pay attention, you will understand that it has four main parts: introduction, method, results, discussion, and conclusion. The word method sometimes is called the experimental model, the experimental part, methodology, methods and materials, or simulation. So it doesn't matter. With any of these words and terms, we refer to the same content, method or methodology. So don't be confused if you notice and you encounter with different terms about this part. Occasionally, these four sections that I told you, they can even slightly be rearranged. For example, sometimes you will see that the result and discussion part are combined. Sometimes they are separated. Sometimes the discussion and conclusion sections are combined. It doesn't matter. They can be slightly rearranged. However, generally speaking, this is the structure of any research article. If you pay attention to this diagram, you will notice that it has a conical shape, wider at the top and narrowing down. I want to emphasize that we start from a general point of view, a general state, and then transform into something specific to our research, which we are discussing in this special article. Then we continue in the same manner and we write the sections as result, methodology, discussion, and this form this structure. After that, again we go back to our general state and we start being general. This is the standard structure of any research article. If you pay attention carefully to this diagram, the first thing that you can see in this diagram is that the diagram is symmetrical. This is because many of the things you need to do in the introduction are done in reverse order in the discussion or conclusion section. For example, you need to write an opening sentence which enables you and your readers to get in or start your paper or your research, your thesis. And you also need to get out at the end of the discussion and conclusion. How? By finding an acceptable way to end the paper. In addition, you must look for a way to interface with the central report section at the end of the introduction. And again, in reverse, when you move out of the central section, the central body of your article, to start the discussion and conclusion. Something else you should notice, the second important point that you should notice in this diagram is about the shape of the diagram. Is that it narrows toward the central section and widens after it. This represents the way information is ordered in your article, in the introduction and in the discussion or conclusion. In the introduction, you start out by being fairly general and gradually narrow your focus, whereas the opposite is true in the discussion and conclusion. So these are the two important points that we can understand from the shape of this diagram. I want you to keep this in mind, that the structure of every scientific article starts from a general concept, becomes something specific to your research, and after that, again, it goes back to the general state. It's the most important point that you should notice about this diagram. I want you to remember this not only while writing your articles, but even while you are reading articles. This will help you while you are reading other writers' articles. It helps you to understand their article. Now let's move on to the other parts of each article. Besides the 4 parts that I mentioned, an article also has other sections, which I will explain in detail in separate videos. Title, authors and affiliation, acknowledgement, author's contribution, supplementary data, and references. They are also other sections that you can encounter while reading an article. While you are speaking about the title, it's obvious it is the main subject of your article. After that, I told you about the author's name and author's affiliation. By affiliation, I mean where the author and their emails is listed, in which university, which department. This means the affiliation. About other parts, like acknowledgement that I told you, it's a part special for appreciating and thanking the people, the organizations, the institutes who helped you in doing this research and in writing this article. This is the acknowledgement part. Another important part is the author's contribution. In author contribution section, you will speak about the role and contribution of each of the authors in this article, who is the corresponding author and who is not. And the order of the writers, it shows their role and their contribution in writing this article. So the things that you put in this part is called author's contribution. Another section that I told you is the supplementary information or supplementary data. You can encounter different names here. Sometimes in some articles in special fields, you have lots of detailed information about one of the sections of your article. For example, about the methodology. If your information is too much and it will take lots of space in your article, it's better to put it in a section called supplementary data or supplementary information at the end of article. The reason for this is that usually journals have limitation about the number of pages that they can allocate to your article. So if you want to put all of this detailed information in the main article, it will take too much space and it's not good. So it is better to put them in another section called supplementary data. In this way, any interested reader who wants to have more information, who wants to have more detail about this section can refer to that part and see the related information. So this section is called supplementary data. Of course, these parts are optional. You don't find them in all articles. In special fields and majors and topics, as I told you, you will encounter such sections. Another section is the graphical abstract. Graphical abstract is a visual representation of your article content. Sometimes the journal asks you for this graphical abstract and sometimes not. Again, it's optional. And abstract is one of the most important parts of your article, which I will explain about it in its own separate video in detail. And here only I can say that it's the summary of your article abstract, and it is separated from the graphical abstract. Sometimes we have both of them, sometimes not. We have only the abstract, which is the main part in your article. I want you to know that we have some changes in this general structure that I explained for you. But these changes are in details. The general structure, as I told you, includes the four main parts always. Again, I repeat them: introduction, method, result, discussion, and conclusion, which are the main sections. And other sections, they can appear or sometimes you do not see them. As I told you, I will explain a little about each of these parts and sections in this video. Of course, I don't want to give you much information because, as I told you, I will explain it in its own place, in its own video later in the other videos that you have seen their list at the beginning of this video, and also you saw the list of them in video number 2. But here I only give you a brief explanation about each of them. I have written it for you in next slide, and you can pause this video to read the explanation, the brief explanation about each of them. As I told you, I don't want to read these out loud for you, and the reason is that I don't want to give you too much detail here. I will make this detail for you. I will explain this detail for you in the special video about each section, from title, the beginning of an article, to the supplementary information or supplementary data. Each of them has its own separate video where I will explain each in detail. In previous explanations, I mentioned that abstract is the summary of your article. I think for now it's enough. Later I will give you much information. And introduction, as you can guess from its name, is where you introduce your paper. You speak about the reason of doing this research, about the aims of this research. You give simply the introduction about your research and your paper, explaining why you are conducting this study. These are the parts of introduction. The method section comes next, and you speak about the procedure of your research, the methodology and the simulation or the experimental parts that you have committed in this study. In the results section, you present the findings and results of your research, and you speak about them in the discussion. You discuss them in the discussion part, and after that you draw your conclusion in the section called conclusion. Of course, I also mentioned the other sections like acknowledgments, author contribution, references, and supplementary information. I explained them before in this video for you. This is a general overview of any scientific article that you should be familiar with. You will encounter these sections in any scientific article, of course, except for the optional parts that I told you which parts are optional. Now I want to show you some examples. These examples are not all related to full paper or original or review articles. I will explain this in next video for you, the difference between types of articles. Now look at the first example. The first example is an article named An Overview of Architecture Education. It has 7 pages. It is somehow, we can say it is a short article. I want to show you the parts that I mentioned so you can see where they are in the first page of the article. Look at the top, it always starts with the title. The title of the article, which we can see here. As I told you, it's about an overview of architecture education. Of course, it has a subtitle. I will speak about it in its own video. Then after the title, it comes to the names of the authors, and their order is usually written according to the convention in that country, in that university department, or in the convention in the journal, where the corresponding author's name usually comes last. Here you can see the name of the authors, and here with this star, as you can see, the corresponding author is identified. We can identify the corresponding author here. After the name of the authors, we can see the affiliation of the authors. The address that their names and their emails are listed, for example, in a special university, in a special department in that university, a college in that university, something like this. It indicates which university they are from, along with their email addresses and information about them. After that, after the affiliation, we have the abstract section. Then, after the abstract, as you can see, the introduction starts. Here the introduction starts, and after the introduction, we have the methodology. The word which is used in this article is, as I told you, methodology, and I explained that we can have different names, of course. After the methodology, you can see in part number 3, we have discussion, which discusses about the results and the findings drawn from the methodology. And finally, at the end, we have the conclusion section. After conclusion, as you can see in this paper, we have acknowledgment, which, as I told you, it allocates to appreciating from the people who contribute and who helped conducting this research. And after the acknowledgement, we have the references section in this special article. As I told you, it's a short article, and in this short article, for example, we didn't have author's contribution, we didn't have supplementary information. All the information were included in the main part of the article. This was a simple example for showing different parts of the general structure of an article. Let's have another example here. The second example, it is a longer article. It has 16 pages, as you can see here. Again, at the top, we have the title. It is a study on design process in architecture. The title is related to architecture. After the title, you can see the name of the author. It has only one author. And after this, you can see the affiliation of this author. Of course, when we have one author, it's obvious that this single writer is the corresponding author. So we should not identify the corresponding author. After the affiliation, you can see the abstract, then keywords. As you can see, we didn't have graphical abstract. It wasn't needed. Only the main abstract is included here. After the abstract, the introduction comes, and the introduction of this article is too long and we have lots of information here. As you can see here, we have some subsections for introduction, and it is a good way, this categorizing is a good way to organize your article. It is more reader friendly to organize each section to subsections. Of course, it doesn't have standard factors and standard rules. It's based on, it depends on the case of your article. But as I told you, it is reader friendly, so it's better to do this. If it is possible and if your section can be categorized to different subsections, it's better to do it. As you can see in this example, in the second example, we can see subsections, for example, for the introduction part. As I told you, the introduction is too long. Until page, I can say until page 12, we have still the introduction. So introduction has much information and it was better to organize it. After the introduction, we have a section named simulation. This simulation is the same as methodology, is the same as experimental part. As I told you before, we can see different and various words for this part, so don't be obvious. This is the same as methodology. After explaining a little about the simulation and experimental part of the study, it comes to the discussion part, as you can see, and then after that we have the conclusion. After the conclusion, we directly have the references without the author's contribution, without acknowledgement. They were optional, remember, they were optional, and it's not needed to include them in each article. So in this video, we discussed the complete structure of a research article, of a scientific writing, and became familiar with different sections of this diagram. In next video, I will explain about different types of articles and the properties of each of them. See you in next video.